we're going to be going over the concept of arrays and array lists, and we're going to be connecting various concepts in addition to, again, arrays and array lists with for loops, and we're going to create a simple program. But the point of this video is to show you guys, again, how to create a program from scratch with, again, arrays and array lists, since that is a new topic. And then we're going to also connect a variety of concepts like classes, instance variables, in addition to for loops, and how we can, again, make that all work in addition to arrays and, of course, array lists. So as you can see, again, with my videos that are on, of course, computer science, you can see that I have a variety of comments, and these are of course for you guys to read as we're moving on throughout the video. And also I wanted to note that I have two classes here. So one class, of course, this is where we're going to really construct all of our program, our methods, our instance variables. Then also I have the array tester. And essentially with this one, I'm going to be running the program here. Of course, this is where the main method is also located. So I'm going to create my object. I'm going to, again, I also created my array and my array list here. But again, I'm going to show you guys how that all works in Scratch with creating the, of course, class from scratch and using instance variables to apply the concepts of arrays and array lists. But aside from that, again, I have two classes open. One is from constructing our program from scratch using all of those concepts of instance variables and objects, and one with the main method where we will run our program. Okay, so let's go to the arrays.java class, which I have the public class arrays here. Now you saw, actually, if I go back to the arrays tester class, you saw that I have an import statement, right? I have import java.util.ArrayList. And the point of this, whenever you are going to declare or really just use an array list, you need to add that import statement. It is very, very important that you do that, because otherwise you cannot actually use an array list. So it's really vital that you keep that import statement in mind, and you, of course, use it and put that in there before you actually create an array list. So even though I have it in my main method or where my program is going to be run, I need to also put it inside my, again, arrays class here. So the very first thing, of course, is I need to import java.util.ArrayList. Array list, not list. Okay, so now we are one step away, or actually one step done. So we added our import statement using the java.util.ArrayList call there. Now, the next thing we need to do is just to input our instance variables. Something unique here. I'm going to make my array list as instance variables. So how is this going to look like? Well, if you wanted to use your array as an instance variable, you could just write it out as private int mooks. Simple as that. That is basically how you declare an array pretty much. Now to do for an array list, you say private array list, and then the type that we'll put it as is integer of nukes. You can call them whatever. And then we'll have a string instance variable. Always put that private there. Private is string of cooks. Random names, name them whatever you want. But again, so I have three instance variables. One is an array, one is an array list, and one is a string. And keep in mind, you can see that the type that we declare them as is kind of weird. They're not synonymous. You can see that with the array, the way we declared it as an integer type was with this call here, integer, and then brackets, and then the name of that instance variable. But with array list here, we have to put this kind of this less than and greater than sign in between, where we put the type there is integer. And this is known as really an integer kind of object, right? If you write this out, the way this works is that the array list auto boxes this integer kind of, again, object. So it auto boxes that, and then that's how we can define it as a type for our array list. And since we declared it as an integer, or type of integer technically, then we can only use, again, integer types. So we cannot use, for example, strings or whatever. That will not work. So just keep that in mind. So that is how we declare our instance variables for both arrays, array lists, and as well as a string. So we did that. Second step is done. And we actually did that. The next thing we need to do is to, of course, create our array constructor. So constructors always have the same name as the class that we're using. So it's going to be public arrays of, and then we can pretty much use the essentially the same names as the array and the array list. So integer of mooks, and then array list of integer of nukes, braces, of course. And then the way we essentially initialize the array and the array list, or how we're going to, again, write them out in terms of, again, our constructor here, is that you're not going to use this dot. This dot is actually not a viable way to write this out. So how this is going to work is that we need to say mooks equals new, and this is for our array, by the way. So mooks is equal to new int, just braces. Then let me write out the array lists, and I will actually explain this process. So then nukes will equal to new array list, and yes, we need to write this out, new array list, and there you go. So why did I write it out like this? Well, actually, let me go to my main method here. So do you kind of see a resemblance? If you see here, integer of looks is equal to new int. Basically, what I'm doing here is that I'm taking this half of the code to really initialize an array. So if you can see here, there's that resemblance, right? Mooks equals new int. That's a resemblance of looks equals new int. And then, of course, that is followed by our array, how much items we want in our array. But you saw here I didn't put anything inside these braces. That's because, again, my array here is going to add those elements inside. So I don't need to add anything here. And then, of course, with the array list, again, it's the second half of the initializing an array list, really. So you can see here in Dukes, it's just this half, new array list. And then if I go back here, there's that resemblance, right? New array list, and it's pretty much initialized there. Okay, cool. So we created our array constructor in order to, yes, construct the basics of our object that we will create. Now, the next thing is just to create our methods. So these methods, one of them will return an array list after kind of working with the elements that we have. And then the second method is we're going to kind of use our string instance variable cooks and kind of manipulate the program here to, again, just add string values to the array list. And again, I'll show you how that works, of course. But the first thing that we need to do is to create our method that will return an array list. So how we write this out is we're going to say public. So we're going to say public, and then our type is literally just array list integer, and then get mooks, and then we're going to input, let's say we're going to input integer of, we can name this whatever, integer of cooks, and then, I don't know, let's say array list integer of mooks, array list integer of mooks. Again, you can call these whatever you want. And then what I want to do here is that I want to, of course, these are my technically variables, right, that I will input essentially in my main method in our object. So how we're going to write this out is that I'm going to say for integer of, at this point I'm running out of names, but for integer of Dan is equivalent to the elements of cooks, then we can say mooks dot add Dan, and then I want to then say return mooks. Okay, so what did I do here? This for loop, this is a for loop, of course, but this for loop is a special type of for loop. This is known as an enhanced for loop. So if you see this kind of, yeah, that's a colon, but this means that for every element inside my array, so you see here, this is integer of cooks, right? For example, the elements of an array would be 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, right? So what I'm saying here is that Dan is equivalent to all of these elements. Basically, Dan is taking all of these elements of our array, and I'm just adding all of those elements to my array list. So let me reiterate that. For every element of Cooks, Dan will take it, basically it will be equivalent to them, and then we're going to add all of those elements of the array, that's basically what it's doing, to our array list. And also, I did not mention this, but the array list has a variety of methods, and one of which is .add. And with the .add method, what you're doing is that you're going to add the elements of the array, of course. So mooks.add is adding all of the elements of the array into the array list mooks. And then what we're doing here, of course, after that, is we are returning mooks, which is our array list. That's the type, of course, as we declared here. Okay, so kind of a lot there, I think I mentioned, but again, just keep in mind that this for loop is an enhanced for loop. It's taking all of the elements, and you are adding all of those elements to our array list here using the .add method. Again, using the .add method. And then again, we'll take a look at, of course, when our program is finished and all is set, what our output will look like. Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to create a method that will return a string type. So let's say public is string get my string, and then I'm going to be passing in, let's say array list integer shooks. So here I just wrote out again our array list integer of shooks. We're just going to be using our array list. And then what I'm going to be doing here is that I'm going to initialize the string instance variable. So cooks is equal to, you could say whatever again. I'm going to say cooks is equal to nice bro. So random. Okay. So cooks is equal to nice bro. And then I'm going to be using a simple for loop here and say integer of I is equal to 0. I is less than shooks.size. And then that's another method. The size method checks how big the array list is. So again, the size method is synonymous to a length of a string, for example, where you use the .length method. It checks how long the string is. But in this case, the .size is checking how many elements or the maximum elements of our array list. So keep that in mind. And then we use I++ to, of course, iterate through that. And then what we want to do here is we can say, cooks plus equals compound operator there equals to each element of shooks.getI. And then I want to return cooks. All right, cool. So you see here, let's break this down. So we have our for loop here, integer I is less than shooks.size. So it's going to iterate through the array list until we reach the maximum element, until we reach the maximum index, I should say. And then the .get method here, it just means that we're getting each index value of the array list. So for example, at index 0, we would have our first array list element. At index 1, we would have our second element of our array list, and so on. So this is just adding cooks. We are adding nice bro to each element of the array list. And then of course we're returning cooks as our final value after we go through all of the elements of the array list until we reach the maximum index value. So again, we use our for loop. Then we set cooks is a compound operator. It's going to add cooks to each element of the array list until we reach the maximum index value. And the .get method will return that value as an index. And then we're going to return cooks in the end as our final return value. So that is all done, guys. We created our array class. Now, all we need to do here is just to create our object, our constructor here, and then to print out each of the methods. We already constructed our array. Oh yeah, so we will create our object right now, and then we'll print out each. And also we did this. All right, So now we're ready again to create our array constructor, or array object. So we say arrays of nice man is equal to new arrays of looks followed by dukes, because those were our parameters, right? Inside our constructor, we wanted one array and one array list, right? Okay, now we are just ready now to print out each of our methods using our arrays object that we created. So all we do here is system.out.print, you can say ln of nice man dot, what was one of our methods? It was getMooks. Dot get mooks. We need to put again the cooks and mooks. So it was our first array, looks and as well as dukes. And then of course our next method was system.out.println niceman.getMyString. And then of course I only used the array list, right? Yes. So that was just dukes there. All right. Seems like we are all ready. We did it correctly, and we're set just to get our output value. So we click the green play button here. Cool. There we go. So see, this was our first method here, system.out, and then we got the array list, or the, yeah, so we got the array list as the output, which we got the elements here. That was all of the elements of the array, right? So you saw here was 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. This method just added all of those elements into the array list, and we returned that output, which was again 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. So that is neat. And then nice bro 5, 6, 8. So you can see here I just added, if you saw, I added all of the elements of the array list, which was these values, to the string value nice bro, which we initialized using our string instance variable cooks. So you saw here again, cooks was nice bro, then it added 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. And if you want, make this more nicer. So let's just rerun this again. There you go. Now you can see here it's more cleaner. all I did was just add a space there, but you can see again, nice bro, and then you have each of the elements of the array list added here. So 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, in addition to nice bro, which was our string value initialized. All right, awesome guys. So that concludes the video. Thank you so much for watching. I think I did go over a lot here, so feel free to reach out to me if you guys have any questions. But I hope with this program, even though it was simple, that you guys got a better understanding of how to use arrays and array lists, and also with a combined concept of creating classes and for loops. I also introduced a new type of for loop. Hopefully you understood that. And again, to create a whole program from scratch using, again, all of the concepts we went over today. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.